everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Anxiety Chats. Today we have another anonymous story, and we are joined by Dr. Traci Potterf. Today's story is about this viewer, how they used ice baths to help ease their anxiety. As always, if you would like to send your anonymous story to us, then head to the link in the description of wherever you're listening to this video, or you can come on and chat with me in person. It's honestly not as scary as you think. So, welcome, Dr. Traci.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. You've actually been on this podcast before my time. You're one of the OGers.
Yeah, we had a discussion about gut health and anxiety and mental health. It was awesome.
So interesting. Something that I'm very interested in myself. I'm an IBS girl, and yeah, it's not an easy one. And the gut and the anxiety is just so related, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When you fix your gut, you can help fix your anxiety, and the gut and the brain share chemical pathways, and they share a similar reality. So if you have inflammation in your gut, you have it in your brain too. Yeah.
It makes so much sense. And would you like to give us a little introduction of you and who you are?
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Traci Potterf, PhD, that kind of doctor. So I call myself a functional health anxiety detective. And so functional medicine is a movement of doctors and scientists who are trying to find the root causes of illness instead of just treating symptoms. And we tend to look at medications and surgeries and things like that as more of a last resort than a first resort, or something if it's urgently needed in the moment. But you eventually really want to figure out what's causing this. And pandemic was kind of coming to a close. I felt this really strong calling to start helping people with anxiety. So I'd been kind of a generalist for a long time. And what I started noticing is that when I would help people heal whatever medical condition they had, whether it was, and again, I don't heal people heal themselves, right? When we're finding the underlying causes of their gut issues, their weight issues, their cardiovascular disease, their autoimmune issues, it just went on and on and on, their anxiety and depression would go away. And I realized that anxiety is not a disorder, it's a symptom. It's like a smoke alarm. It's your body's way of asking for help, just like a headache, just like a rash, just like a cough, just like nausea, just like fatigue. It's a symptom. It's not a defect. It's not a genetic chemical imbalance that means you have to be on meds the rest of your life. It's a cry for help from your body. And one of the things I realized early on, I actually was a medical anthropologist before I got into functional health. And one of the things I realized, I was studying the impact on indigenous communities of industrialized culture. And when they started living like us, they got the same diseases and they got the same mental health issues. And so around that time, my mom had been diagnosed with Crohn's disease. They wanted to take her colon out. They said, she'd have to have a permanent colostomy and be on immunosuppressants the rest of her life. And I just wasn't open to that. So I ended up, we figured out a way to get her into remission from Crohn's disease. And she's been quiescent, meaning in remission, ever since 2004, not on meds. Her colon's intact. And that taught me that we have an ability to heal ourselves. And a lot of the information for how to fix a lot of these complex problems is in the science. If you go do the research, you find the solutions, but it's not being offered in mainstream medical care because we have a very pharmaceutical biased healthcare system. And it doesn't mean there's no place for pharmaceuticals, but it's not right for pharmaceuticals to be the only option when there's so many things you can do with your lifestyle, with supplements, with herbs, with all kinds of neuroplasticity. Like there are things you can do to reprogram your brain and nervous system to heal yourself. There's so many tools out there that are non-pharmaceutical. They need a place at the table, and they're often much safer and more effective and can create long-term changes. And the irony of this whole thing is my dad was a psychiatrist. So I grew up helping out in his office from the time I was a teenager. And he would take me with him to see his to see his patients. So I was like this emotional support kid that would cheer them up. And then I started having a panic disorder when I was 19. Well, I'd say it's not, I don't really think it's a disorder. Back then they told me that. So I had my first panic attack when I was 19. And so back then they would say it's a genetic chemical imbalance. You have to be on meds the rest of your life. And I refused. I was like, I refuse to accept that as my reality. That's a life sentence. I don't want a life sentence. And
Wow.
so I started really searching for solutions. And so it was through my medical anthropology research that it started revealing itself. And I was able to reverse my anxiety and keep it out. And then later, I actually had some medical situations happen where it came back. And had to figure that out. I got toxic mold poisoning. I got lead poisoning living in a house with peeling paint where there was a lot of the landlord was negligent and didn't really care about me. And so heavy metals are a huge cause of anxiety, metal fillings, parasitic infections, hormone imbalances. I mean, there's so many physiological, the gut for sure. There's so many physiological reasons a person has anxiety, even if you've had severe trauma. I had severe trauma. My dad was very mentally ill and very psychologically abusive and a psychiatrist. And so so if you're out there and you think, oh, I've had really bad trauma or my job is stressful and that's why I have anxiety all the time, that's not the full picture. It's part of the picture. It's not the full picture, your lifestyle and what's going on with your physiology, with your body. Like if you can optimize those things, there are things you can do to reprogram your brain and nervous system, even with severe trauma. So I just want people to know there are solutions for your anxiety that really work. So you don't have to be overcome by anxiety day in and day out and debilitated by this the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with you. If you have anxiety, you're not defective, you're not broken, there are solutions. So that was my long rambly intro. All right, let's meet this gal with the ice baths. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I was just telling Dr. Traci before we started that this story is about a girl who, or person, we don't actually know the gender of these people, a person who has ice baths to help their anxiety. And yeah, so it's really interesting to me because it sounds like something I absolutely would not like to do, but I'm interested to find out.
You know, Emily, like
Okay.
I hated cold. I hated cold. And then when I had the lead poisoning, actually ice baths really helped heal my nervous system. So let's hear about this.
Yeah, I really want to hear about this. This sounds interesting. Okay, so I struggle with depersonalization and derealization as well as anxiety and ADHD. I've been looking for alternative coping methods that might help me overcome some of my challenges. I like to tell myself that if I can push through any fear and sit in an ice bath for 10 minutes every day, I can learn to fear, panic, and doctors less. With my ice bath journey, I have noticed some changes as to how I feel and how my days lay out. I'm able to focus my attention easier and don't feel the need to fidget as often. My anxiety has been drastically improved during the day, even though it has only been for a few days. I even noticed that I look forward to starting my day and completing an ice bath. Ice baths are a great way for me to ground myself, connect with my body, and notice how I feel physically. My family even enjoys doing them with me, so it brings us together, if not for more than 10 to 20 minutes every day. I'm on day 4 of taking an ice bath every day for my anxiety and panic attacks. I haven't experienced any relief from my dissociation and help with grounding, but I have noticed a slight increase in mood. I feel a little happier during the day, and I didn't wake up last night from a panic attack. I am still affected greatly at night time with anxiety and derealization and depersonalization, but the effects seem calming. I can focus on the relief of after the ice bath. I still want to work on methods for my anxiety, and I really like the ice bath. I'm not doing great right now, and I watched some videos that basically said that your depersonalization and derealization is being fed by giving it control. I will acknowledge it's there, but anything it tells me will not be. I will respond to my anxiety with, maybe you're just trying to scare me. I look around and I cannot see any danger. Recovery is day by day, and even though I feel okay now, I probably won't later, but this won't last forever. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I really love what they said about if they can get through 10 to 20 minutes of an ice bath, they can get through any anxiety and panic. And I think that's the one thing that maybe draws me towards ice water and cold water swimming is I can imagine feeling like if you can sit in 20 minutes of ice, you can get through a panic attack because it's kind of that same like shock feeling almost.
Yeah. And 20 minutes is a long time in ice. Like even 5 minutes is beneficial. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, it's interesting because she's getting a combination of a practice and self mastery. But she, just the whole mind over matter or whatever. But she's also, there's a lot of data showing that this is something called, so ice or ice cold water is something called a hormetic stressor. There's a word called hormesis, which I feel like sounds like a Dr. Seuss character, like, hi, this is hormesis. But hormesis is a kind of stressor that is actually builds resilience on a biological level, which is mental too. Anything that builds mental resilience builds physical resilience, or physical and mental, because our physical and mental, it's the same. There's no separation between our mind and body ever. We just talk like that's a reality, but it's not. And so this actually helps the mitochondria, which are these little organelles that, it's like your cells have little organs in them, and the mitochondria, it's like the combustion engine. It's like batteries, the batteries of your cells where energy is made. And these kinds of hormetic stressors actually help your cells make more energy. They help you build resilience on a cellular level. It also helps with it does take down some inflammation, but it also helps with the brain, that kind of shock feeling, helps recalibrate the brain and nervous system. When I had lead poisoning, I had a tremor, and I was very clumsy and weak, and I had trouble. It was painful to exercise, horrible muscle weakness. I developed fibromyalgia. And I remember getting in an ice cold river, and my former business partner and close friend, Skaya, said, learn to make friends with the micro discomforts of cold. So I just sat there with the sensation of it instead of pushing against it. And then I noticed after we spent time in this ice cold river, I got out and I felt euphoric. I felt energized. I wasn't shaking anymore. My mind was clear and sharp. I wasn't like all fuzzy anymore. And I could scramble over rocks and hike without feeling like I was going to fall. And it was my first sample of hope that I was going to heal from how sick I was. So I really love that this person who wrote in, number one, I appreciate the vulnerability and the rawness of the share. I like it helps me, but I'm still not there yet. I still need solutions. I've been told, I want to comment on, and then I want to let you talk, but I want to comment on, it's interesting because I talk to people about top down, bottom up. So top down is when we use our mind and consciousness to change our body. That's absolutely a real thing. It's so powerful. There's so much science coming out about this. So that is absolutely real. And I talk about bottom up, which is giving our bodies, our physical bodies, the support they need so that they make chemicals that create good feelings instead of chemicals that create what we call mental illness or whatever. Because the disassociation, the panic, that's something going on in her biology that needs help. And I want to be careful with telling people they should just be able to think differently, and then suddenly this biological problem that's screaming for attention is supposed to just go away. Like, we need both. We need to do the top down, but we need to do the bottom up. If you don't give your body, you don't heal your gut, you don't detoxify, you don't give your body the nutrition it needs, the sleep it needs, if you don't give your body what it needs, then it's so hard to expect it to heal just through thought alone.
Totally. And I think that's one of the really positive aspects of this story, is that this person is obviously dealing with a lot of different symptoms and a lot of different, depression, derealization, anxiety, and they're being proactive. And that's something that for a lot of people, when you're really in the depths of it, it can be really hard to, be like, I'm gonna go and run an ice bath, because sometimes going to the kitchen to get a glass of water can be tricky,
Right.
So I think
Right.
the bravery and the courage and the energy this person's using into something positive is like really, really cool. And that's where it all starts. Like, they've made the biggest stride in doing something that is actually helpful for them, for their body and their mind. It's just like really impressive and quite touching, actually, that they're, that's really the start of the journey. And like you said, it's really cool that they also said, but I still have loads of other things and I still have a way to go. That's fine. It's not overnight going to be everything's magically changed. It's
Right.
a lot of little things, isn't it?
Yeah. You know what? I love what you said. And I feel like sometimes I remember when I've had in the past really, really bad anxiety, just getting out of bed, just doing anything really feels like. It feels like you're going through life wearing just this weighted suit of just having your energy drained and overtaken and your mind disrupted. And, it's funny because when I was I was starting to figure out my messaging to help people with anxiety, someone gave me this feedback about, and it was kind of making people with anxiety seem like kind of weak and fragile. And I know the person meant well, was trying to help. And I was like, no, you don't understand. When you have anxiety, you're not weak or fragile. Like, you have a capacity. You are processing so much information. And the fact that you even still exist and get through life, like, is a miracle. Because I just want people with anxiety. It's like, people who are anxiety prone are strong, also tend to be very highly sensitive, meaning you take in a lot of feelings and emotion from the world around you, often have been through a lot of trauma. So people with anxiety are some of the strongest people I know. And people go through mental health struggles of all kinds, some of the strongest people, because, what's happening in your body is so heavy to live with. And to take action and be proactive and look for creative solutions that are outside the box on top of everything you're experiencing on the daily, like, that's kudos to you. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's so nice, actually, and something that sometimes it's easy to forget when you're going through it. And I know a lot of people that are like, I'm weak. I wish I could be stronger. I wish I could be more brave. And it's like, well, you're going through all of this, like you said, whilst carrying all this armor, whilst carrying all this information, whilst also this person just talked about family, whilst carrying family, and then, having to try and,
and
it's
a job,
just, like you said, really so brave, and a job, and oh God. But like you said, 100%, some of the strongest women I know, and doing this podcast, some of the women that have come on here, I am in awe of. I'm like, you are just, and it's so sad when people don't see it about themselves. Like, you're so cool. And this person who's written this story, I also feel that towards them. Like, do you have any experience or advice on depersonalization and derealization? Because I know a few girls have talked to me about this, and it's not something I have loads of experience with.
So I'm not going to say I'm the world expert on this, but I want to be careful to generalize, because it's interesting how so many of the same symptoms can be caused by so many different things. Like, earlier, I listed a bunch of biological causes of anxiety, of like gut issues, brain issues, contamination, like from the environment, from mold, from metals, from environmental toxins. I run labs on my clients and I see what's in their urine. If their kidneys are working, then it's representative. And people have, especially in Hawaii, have so much mold in their system that can be it can actually, it damages your brain. There's lead, there's mercury, there's aluminum, there's all these other metals like thallium that most people haven't even heard of. There's, different kinds of things going on with it, like, say, the thyroid. But the thyroid issues are often caused by viruses like Epstein-Barr, or metals. Heavy metals can affect the thyroid. So it goes on and on. You have to dig underneath. But, with depersonalization, derealization, often there's like very severe trauma where the adaptation was to disassociate or leave the current reality. That also happens with ADD, ADHD, is a lot of times comes from like a child who is in an environment where it was so like you don't have control of your environment as a child, and your boundaries are violated. Like, you can't set your own healthy boundaries. And so you have to have an escape. So whether it's like you escape in your mind with ADD or depersonalization, derealization, there's often really severe childhood trauma, some kind of abuse, or, whether it's sexual abuse or other kinds of abuse, or just being in a really toxic environment. I know someone who, I've known people who've grown up in religions where it was very cult-like, where they, there's a lot going on. I don't want to name specifically or whatever, but where there was a situation with a religion where if you questioned anything, your family would abandon you, or, things like that. So there are all kinds of ways you can traumatize a human being. And the part of a person that disassociates or goes through derealization is not, I want to reframe this. One of the things I think is beautiful about internal family systems work, if anyone isn't familiar with that, it's looking at that we have these different parts of ourselves, and they're actually like smaller, young parts of ourselves that are trying to protect us. So even if someone cuts on themselves, if someone disassociates if someone has even an addiction, whether it's sugar or online shopping or meth, that there's a part of us that's trying to help us feel better. And that part of us is very young, and that part of us is a child, and that part of us doesn't need to be made bad. So I know it can sound hard, but like the part of someone that might disassociate, I'd be curious, I'd love to talk to this person, but like that part is, I really feel like that part of you is trying to protect you. If this person's listening, I feel like that part of you, and you may already know this, but that part of you is trying to protect you. That part of you really means well. And we can't make it bad, and we can't make it wrong. We need to earn its trust and let it find other ways to help. We don't want to exile this part of ourselves and say, you don't belong here. We need to say, I love you. Thank you for trying to help me. Let's find a way you can help that doesn't hurt. I think that's so important. It's so important with binge eating. It's so important with alcohol, with cigarette, like with anything that we're doing to try to feel better. And unfortunately, what's modeled to us in our culture, one of the things that Emily and I talked about before we came on is, why we're so mentally and physically ill? Because we're not living in a way that works with our evolutionary biology. Again, you take indigenous communities, give them our lifestyle, they develop our mental and physical illnesses. So we're not living in the way we evolved to live. We've come so far away from what our biology is designed for. We're not meeting our most basic human needs. And then when you pile individual family event trauma on top of that, like, hello, of course we're going to have these struggles. And so this journey, I feel like physical and mental illness isn't an end to well-being. It's a doorway to transformation. It's a cry for help. It's like a possibility that if my passion in life is taking all these resources from science that aren't making it into mainstream medicine. They're science-backed, effective solutions. And some of them do come from indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge. Some of them do come from Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and Buddhism and, all these different spiritual traditions. And sometimes cultures we've never even heard of before, like Nordic culture and ice baths. And we take these things and we evaluate them. And if you look at them from the context of our evolutionary biology and our most primal basic human needs, when we start to meet our most basic human needs using things that work with and not against the intelligence of nature, then our bodies have this amazing capacity to heal themselves. And so one of the things I named my company Inner Genius Health, because nature is genius. Like if you start learning like how we evolved, like as mammals, like mammals evolved like after the last extinction event when the sun was blotted out underground. We actually emit UV light with our cells. It's hard to measure, but we emit light, like we are beings of light. Literally, it's not just like a new age thing. It's like real biology, and it's like nature is so genius. And the thing is, we are nature. Nature isn't where we go on a walk or a hike or a camping trip. Nature is what we are. We are manifestations of nature's genius. That means we are genius. Our bodies are genius. Our cells are genius. Our microbes are genius. So when we work with and not against that intelligence, when we tap into it, the human body's ability to heal, even from anxiety, even from OCD, even from bipolar disorder, even from schizophrenia, there's more and more evidence that's so biologically based. And so I'm not an expert in that personally, but there are people who are in functional medicine. That's why I encourage people to look at functional medicine, integrative medicine, and you're going to have to sift and sort because there are people out there who mean well, but may not be quite as skilled. Just like can be a good and bad surgeon, a good and bad lawyer, a good and bad teacher. Not everyone's good at their job. I certainly don't know everything, and I'm not perfect. I'm a real human being. But I really feel like when we open ourselves up to solutions and we're like, I'm going to do what it takes to heal myself. And I'm going to that journey can bring us so much beauty. Meditation alone, even if you think you suck at meditation, there are certain styles of meditation. I have one on my website that it's free. You can go download it. If you don't want to be on my email list, you can just unsubscribe. That's fine. But this thing teaches you how to be in your body, and it teaches you how to actually go inside, be embodied, and it actually helps with physical pain, emotional pain, anxiety, and sleep issues and insomnia. Because this is a problem I see over and over with people with mental health struggles is the disconnect from your body. especially when it feels uncomfortable. The last thing we learn in our culture is when we're uncomfortable physically is to actually sit and feel it, to go inside and just be with what's arising instead of pushing against and running away. We have a culture of running away. And I'm not saying this to judge. Absolutely not. Like, I'm not about judgment or shame. That is like poison in your veins. But if you watch TV, you watch movies, count how many times you see someone say, I need a drink as a coping mechanism, or I need whatever kind of junk food as a coping mechanism, because we don't have a culture that's modeling to us. People don't say, I need a hug. They don't say, I need to sit with some friends and be heard. They don't say, I need to go eat a really nourishing meal that's delicious so I can ground myself. Or they don't say, I'm going to go to the forest and like sit with bugs and dirt and birds and leaves and trees and just like connect to my own primal biology. Like, no one's saying that in the movies.
Yeah.
So
I absolutely think that is so beautiful. That is absolutely so true. And I think we're so far now away from that we also don't know what we need. We might be feeling anxiety. This person's talked quite a lot about fidgeting, feeling agitated, all those kind of feelings.
Absolutely.
We don't actually know what it is that we could be needing, what we could be feeling even.
Right.
And I've felt that feeling quite a few times, being kind of like, what is this feeling? And also knowing I've not drank 2 liters of water today. I've not really eaten that healthily today. All those kinds of things. And it's also hard, like you said, in a society where we've been brought up where drinking is completely normal, smoking is completely normal, eating unhealthy is completely normal, and asking for your needs and crying and things like that aren't normal. And who is it that's decided that?
God,
who is it that said that's not, And this person in the story, like getting back to ice baths, getting to like, that's something, and they described it as grounding. They're obviously on the track of listening and being like, what is it that I need? I need grounding. How can I find grounding?
Right.
Ice baths.
Right.
That's a really amazing story.
So the ice bath thing is such a good example of going into your body and being with sensation instead of avoiding and running away. Like, that's brilliant. To be, whether it could be heat, it could be cold, it could be a sauna, like alternating saunas and ice baths where you're sweating it out. That also helps you detoxify some of the things that, so there's this word neurotoxin, and it just means something that's a poison to the brain and nervous system. And one of the primary causes of anxiety and severe mental illness is neurotoxins. So these can come from our food supply, from poor quality food. It can come from products we use, environmental toxins. Now, we might have genetic predispositions to be more sensitive. Like, for example, I've tested my genetics. Sometimes I have people test their genetics. And some of us have genes that just make us have a harder time getting things that are poisonous out of our bodies. And so it can make us more sensitive. And what that means is we need to take even better care of ourselves. But the cool thing about being sensitive like that is, because now I'm going to support organic farmers. That's going to protect the planet. I'm going to buy natural body products that are sustainable. I'm going to be, I feel our mental health is inseparable from the health of this planet and the health of the soil. So when you start becoming a better caretaker of your body by working with the intelligence of nature, putting molecules in your body that you evolved to put in and on. If you put it on your skin, you eat it. If it's like a skin cream or perfume or anything, you clean with it, you smell it, you eat it, you ingest it. If you smell it, put it on your skin, put it in your mouth, you eat it. So we're just not even questioning these products we're buying and that we're putting in and on us, and they accumulate. So there's this word called allostatic load. And allostatic load, it's like, think of like you have a bucket of tolerance, like how much crap your body can put up with. And if you have a lot of trauma in your background or a lot of stress in your life, that fills up a lot of space in your bucket. And then, depending on what you're eating, and we've made food so complicated. Like, we've gone from like food was such a simple thing, and now we've made it so complicated, and then we've made it addictive, and then we've made it shameful, and then we blame the individual, and instead of taking cultural collective responsibility, we shame appetite. Like, you should be hungry and you should enjoy your food. I find most people who have weight issues don't eat enough. might periodically binge, but often don't eat enough and don't get enough nutrients. It's actually a malnourishment thing. It's not what people think. And so the amount of confusion and shame just around eating, and then sleep, our sleep is disrupted. And then now we think of movement as something we do to burn calories so that we can look a certain way and be lovable and desirable. Like, no, we move because our bodies move, like our bodies are amazing and it feels good to our brains to move. Like dance is one of the most healing things you can do, even if you think you suck at it, even if you're a big dork, who cares? Like move, dance, So we've taken all these things that are just these natural, beautiful expressions of our humanity and turn them into confusion and shame and self-rejection. And it's like, what's up with that, And I feel like we have the capacity to reclaim this. So culture is created by each one of us. Like every grain of sand makes the beach, right? And so we're voting with our thoughts, we're voting with our consumer behavior, we're voting with our beliefs, we're voting with our words, with how we interact with each other. We're co-creating this reality. And if we decide we want to support businesses that are a higher vibration, that are doing more good for our bodies and for the world, if we decide we want to hold someone while they cry and say you don't have to apologize for crying, if you want to, like if we make different decisions, and like you, Emily, being part of this, like you're choosing to destigmatize anxiety and mental health struggles. You're choosing to offer empathy instead of pathologizing people, right? Like that's so beautiful, Emily, that you're doing this. It's gorgeous, And if more and more of us step up in our own unique way, with our own unique voice, with our own, our daily thoughts and actions. And I don't mean where you're like, oh my God, I have to do everything perfect every day because I'm voting on the reality. I don't mean like that. I mean as a love offering and it's an work in progress. It's like creating a work of art. You're just learning, and just every day, like just what can I do a little different from the me yesterday? I love me yesterday me. Yesterday me was wonderful and lovable. And today me's going to try a couple different things and see what happens. So just being curious and creative and loving and nurturing and compassionate, and also to make space for negative emotion. Like sometimes we're angry, and if you need to beat the crap out of your mattress and scream into a pillow to let it out of your body, do it. Or in your car. Cars are great places to scream,
Yeah.
If you need to go rest, if your body's tired, you probably need sleep. If you're hungry, you probably need food, and make sure it's good quality food and you're getting the nutrients you need. So everything our bodies tell us is for a reason. Is that genius inside of us is trying to talk to us, but we're not taught how to listen. We don't know. Like you said, you get that antsy thing. Like what's causing that? It may be mercury fillings in your mouth causing that. It may be something going on in your gut, like some microorganism. And I don't want to creep people out. We all have parasites, and we have more microbe cells than human cells. That's another thing. We need to stop being afraid of bacteria and virus. I know there are bacteria and viruses that can kill us for sure, but there's so many more that actually keep us alive, and without them we would die. So we're more microbe than human. We get more DNA information from our microbes than our human cells. And these critters they're signaling our intestinal cells to make serotonin and dopamine. So 90% of serotonin is made in your gut, 50% of dopamine is made in your gut. And these critters are signaling your intestinal cells to make these chemicals that affect the lens through which you perceive reality. And I've experienced so many times, when I've had parasites, I've had lead, I've had mold, I've had the opportunity to experience so many underlying causes of anxiety. And I remember when I just have good tools to catch it and reverse it, and the lead is still a process. I still haven't gotten all the lead out. I still, and I still have to deal with mold, and if the levels get high, I'm not detoxing enough, I don't stay up on that, anxiety will come back. But if I stay on top of it, and this is a process, it takes time. It's kind of rare to have lead poisoning. So I'm not saying everyone out there with anxiety has lead poisoning. I'm just saying I'm still in process. And one of the things I notice is that when something is going on physiologically, whether it's an infection or some kind of environmental trigger or whatever the thing is, we will look at the same reality through a lens of hopelessness, terror, fear, threat, whatever. It's like being in a hall of mirrors, looking at a mirror where you're distorted, you look freaky and creepy or whatever, versus looking in a mirror where you look so-called normal. That happens chemically in our body. So when we're seeing life through this distorted lens, and it's painful and it's scary. And the reason it feels that way is the same reason that when you put your hand on a hot stove, it hurts. And so we'll take our hand off. So when we have mental distress, it's your body's way of telling you something's wrong. So, and then you can, when you correct the issue biologically, nutritionally, biologically, when you correct the problem, then you can look in the mirror, and instead of being this distorted, scary version of reality, like you can actually see a peaceful, joyful, optimistic, the world is a good, kind place most of the time reality. And so I just want us to understand we're made of the symphony of cells, or the symphony of chemistry, and it creates a lens through which we perceive reality. And so the importance of rebalancing this is so crucial for mental health. And you can't, I really, the power of thinking, the power of thought, I'm a huge proponent of this. I teach it. It's one of the 3 pillars of my work with people. But you've got to do the lifestyle and the self-care, and you've got to find a good health detective to help you figure, because trying to DIY it, like I've seen people, it's funny, but I've seen people, so personally, when I started learning about mold, I kind of was starting to realize I probably had some kind of toxic mold. And I found out the test to test my house was like $300, and the test to test my urine was like the high $300 or whatever. And I was just like, I don't want to spend that much money. So I didn't want to test for, I didn't want to spend money on labs. And here I am, like in functional health. Like back then I was doing more like lifestyle medicine, and I wasn't doing as much with labs. I was still working with supplements, but I wasn't doing as much with labs. I was like, I'm just going to let all the naturopaths and other people do that. And then I basically got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And so what I could have spent a few $1,000s fixing, I ended up spending if I added it all up, we're probably looking at 6 figures of money I really didn't have to save my own life, because I literally almost died from lead poisoning. So it was terrifying. I was so depressed. I wanted to die. Like I had no dopamine. Like I wanted to die. Like I just felt like it would be easier to die than to fight this thing anymore. And there was so few people that even know how to deal with this. Like doctors aren't taught this in medical school. Naturopaths have some idea, but a lot of them haven't been through it. They don't really understand it. It's tricky. So yeah, I felt, and it was because of my mom. I was like, I can't do that to my mom. I didn't really want to, but it gave me, I've always had empathy for people who are have depression and commit suicide. I always ran more anxious than depressed, but it got to such a bad point that I was so depressed. It just felt easier to die, because I my body couldn't even conjure up a positive scenario for anything. So anyway, we might be digressing a little bit from this story, but I really want people to understand that mental health issues are biological. And even if you're struggling financially, get some kind of help, because when you have a life when you're not just being eaten up inside by anxiety and mental health struggles all the time, and you feel good, and it takes time. It's not going to happen, overnight, like some online shopping delivery service that gets you your thing the next day. We heal at the speed of life, not at the speed of, in the United States, Amazon.com is a big thing. I don't know about there, but that's how, and so it takes time, and it is a process.
Yeah.
And it does take some investment, unfortunately, because even though I know in the UK you guys have a lot more progressive medical system than we do in a lot of ways, but their benefits, and it's kind of, you have to weigh it out on their things that are good and bad on both sides. But I really feel like Europe has way better, way more progressive healthcare system than the United States. Anyway, but I just want people to know that you are worth investing in. And sometimes we make money more important than our own happiness. And there's nothing wrong with money. And I really believe that we make more, when you get your mental health in a good place and your physical health, and you have energy and mental clarity, it gets freed up, your capacity to earn money will go through the roof. And the personal work it takes to free yourself from this, the inner work, the transformation that happens inside of you makes you capable. You become unlimited. And so that's my goal, is help people feel at peace in their own skin so they can have a limitless life.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, and also for sharing some really vulnerable things about you and how, things have affected you. And it sounds like there's lots and lots and lots of little things or bigger things that you've investigated in yourself. You've actually dedicated your life work to understanding this more and trying to help other people too. And, this person who's dealing with this in this story, they're starting that journey that, you started a long time ago by taking an ice bath. And I'm hoping that person's journey can just grow from there and be, like adding in little bits when they come across it. Because I imagine there's been times where you've come across something new and you're kind of like, wait a minute, there's another piece I never thought of. And that's just life.
Right.
I think as long as you stay as open as you can, like even when you feel like you've learned absolutely everything there is to know, stay open to other options, to other people's opinions, to other ideas, because you've never completed your knowledge. And this person, I think, is quite open in that. And they're saying they're on day 4 and they've been having panic attacks loads, and they haven't had a panic attack, and that's so great. I'm so happy for them with that. And I hope they just keep growing.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point. I get people all the time who say, I've tried everything and it didn't work. I tried everything and then I had to get on meds. And I'm not judging meds one way or the other. It just doesn't fix the problem. And there are a lot of side effects. But you've never tried everything. We live in an infinite universe. There's so much knowledge. There are billions of people on the planet. There's so many brilliant minds. There's so much information. You've never tried everything. If you haven't resolved it, you're just still in process. That's all. And there's this mix of like, I want to, like, on one hand, I offer a lot of free information, like on Instagram and, my email list. But like, I also, and it doesn't have to be me, it can be someone else. Like, I do work long distance, but like, the point is like to get help, like, because like, I wish I could have, I'm trying to become who I wish I had when I was so debilitated by anxiety and mental health issues. Really, it was so painful. It was like worse than headaches, worse than nausea, it was worse than any so-called physical. It was physical. It is physical. Like, it feels terrible. The sensations in your body are terrible. And I just wanted to become who I wish I could have had for me when I couldn't find a way out. And it's great to DIY a lot of things, but it's so much faster, to get a guide who's taken a bunch of people up that mountain. And so that's why I'm a huge proponent of functional medicine, but finding someone just because they've done functional medicine or a naturopath or integrative doesn't mean they're great at everything. Some people are like, everything's candida or everything's your thyroid, So you want to find someone who's just really going to really get in the trenches with you, with your lifestyle. Someone's going to get in the trenches with you, with helping to reprogram your nervous system. And it may be multiple people, maybe one person. And someone who's going to like run some labs or really figure out what's going on with you and lean into your edge. I'm not saying be fiscally responsible and create things that, go spend, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I notice a lot of people say they can't afford help, but then they'll go buy a big screen TV or, if their car breaks down, they'll fix it. If the roof in their house leaks, they'll fix it. They'll find a way. A lot of times people were taught to take better care of material items, our computer or cell phone, than our own precious bodies and minds. So I really encourage people to get competent help, which can be a little challenging, because you're having to sift and sort through all these conventional models that are not effective. They're well-meaning. So many of my friends are mental health professionals and they're amazing. And so many of my friends are doctors. Like about 40% of my clients are often medical professionals who hit the limits within their profession and started looking outside the box and came to me because they know I don't totally tear down Western medicine. I'm collaborative. I don't want to be in a war with it. I want to say, hey, let's open it up wider and bring in more solutions. So yeah. And I love this person who's doing the
100%.
ice baths. Just keep doing that and just think of self-care. Think of what would your primal self need? Like, are you getting sunshine? Are you breathing spores in a forest? Are you walking barefoot on the earth when it's not snowing outside? Like, are you, what can you do to come back home to yourself? And then there's probably something going on, even if you've had horrible trauma. So trauma actually affects your immune system in a way that you have more of a susceptibility to like other kind of physical ailments. So they go hand in hand. So like if you've had a lot of trauma, you have more of a risk of autoimmunity and gut issues and even susceptibility to infection because your nervous system and your immune system are interlinked. Like your vagus nerve that regulates your nervous system. It's part of it. It's not the whole thing. But it's supposed to help calm us down. But when we have a lot of trauma, sometimes it won't activate. And that same vagus nerve is important for regulating your immune system so it doesn't overreact or underreact to a trigger, right? So that's why the autoimmunity risk, that's why susceptibility to infection. And, a lot of people have Lyme disease and they've had it since they're a kid. And they like, I've had mental illness my whole life. And I was like, well, you got bitten by a tick when you were 2. So you've had this Lyme disease that's super undiagnosed. Mold is super undiagnosed.
Yeah.
Like there's so many, I keep repeating these same things. And a lot of people don't want to know they have these things because it's too overwhelming. And I'm like, no, find it, like get it. Like if you know you have, I have Lyme disease, and you work with functional medicine, not with a conventional doctor that's just going to put you on doxycycline and ruin your gut, but someone who knows how to treat it herbally and holistically, like it changes your whole outlook on life. It changes everything. So like, don't be afraid to find out what's wrong, because then you can make it right. But you just need to make sure your guide to fix the problem is someone who really knows how to work with the intelligence of nature and not try to override it and tell it to shut up by just putting a bunch of pharmaceuticals on top of it that aren't going to actually bring you back. The reason functional medicine is called functional medicine is because it's restoring function to the body. Instead of, if you're standing on a tack, you're going to take pain meds or you're going to pull the tack out of your foot. So whatever's going on with your mental health, there's some kind of tack. There's something, and usually more than one. So there's some combination. Your bucket is full of stuff and it's overflowing, and your body's using anxiety to get your attention. It's like a smoke alarm. And if your house is on fire and your smoke alarm goes off and you just take the battery out of the smoke alarm, like, take something to turn off the symptom, but you don't put out the fire, your house is still going to burn down. So you don't just have anxiety. There's always a health problem. There's always more than one health problem associated with anxiety. So it's okay if you need to pull the battery out of the smoke alarm, because the noise is so obnoxious, but put out the fire.
That's a really good analogy for that, actually. Yeah, I really like that.
Thank you so much. I use it all the time. I use and abuse it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily.
I'm going to use that too. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Thank you so much to the person that sent in this lovely, lovely story.
Yes.
And it's hard being vulnerable, and you've also been vulnerable today, Traci. So I really appreciate that.
I think the more you do it, the better it feels. So I love it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
We're all human.
Yeah, it takes loads of different. We're all human. We're all trying our best. We all want to be heard and understood. And thank you so much for all of those really interesting takes on that as well. And to everybody listening, thanks very much for listening. And we will hopefully see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.